from my standpoint, supply chain management, like it sounds, you're managing the supply chain. So in order to build a product, you have to have however many parts there are in order to build it. And as crazy as it sounds, if you're missing even one screw or one resistor on that product, it's not the product yet. You're not done. So one little component can throw a wrench in the whole product, and you can't build it, you can't finish it, you can't ship it. So supply chain, managing that and planning, really it's just planning. It's planning for all of the material to show up when you need it to show up, so that you can build product when you need to build it, so you can ship it when you need to ship it. And the management of supply chain is, it's communication with vendors, it's discussing delivery dates, what are the available quantities of a certain thing, and how quickly can they be delivered to us. It's kind of all that logistics that goes into making sure all the parts, every one of them, shows up when we need it to show up.
Yeah, we end up doing quite a bit of risk analysis, looking at parts that could be in short supply, especially during during the pandemic. I mean, there were a lot of disruptions in the supply chain, and we ended up having to go through our products, making sure that the components were still available in the supply chain, and kind of doing a risk analysis on what's the likelihood that they're going to disappear. In some cases, it caused us to have to put additional units in inventory, and of course, that's just exacerbating the whole supply chain problem, because if everybody's panicked and said, "Oh, well, we have to go out and buy all these parts and put them in our inventory just in case we need them," they disappeared overnight. So, we try to only do that on the ones that are really, critical. At the same time, we're looking for alternate parts. And during the last couple of years, we redesigned multiple circuit boards to use parts that were available rather than the parts that were originally designed in. And all of that requires validation of the design at the end before we can actually put it in the product. So it wasn't cheap, but it did keep our manufacturing running. Um, that's not to say that we didn't have supply chain issues. There were some off the shelf parts that simply were taking 16 and 20 weeks, and we couldn't move forward without them. But we worked with our customers to try to mitigate those problems.
Especially to speak towards like components on a circuit board, those have been the most notorious in the last couple of years for being available in abundance one day and being completely off the market the next day, and then back in a week, and then an 80-week lead time next. And it's just been a nightmare. So it's tough to plan when the our distributors or our supply chains inventory is that flexible, or that unreliable. So what we've gone through a lot of our circuit boards, like John has said, or a lot of our designs, and kind of made decisions based on the risk of the availability of the part. So if one day there's a part that we consider high risk on a board, and we look and we say, "Ugh, there's 1,000 of these, but last week there was zero, and we don't know what it's going to look like tomorrow." You know what? Just buy 1,000 of them, because we know we'll use them, put them in inventory, and we'll use them up. That's not our typical model. We typically like to what we call just in time, which is where we bring the material in, we build it to product, we test it, and it leaves, so that the material in the building stays very low and it doesn't stay here for very long. That's how we would normally like to do it. But sometimes, depending on the risk of the product and its availability in the market, we'll go out and buy what we think we're going to need for however much, 6 months, a year, whatever. We actually, I think, just got the go ahead to buy what, 2.5 years worth of one product or one component. Just
Oh,
to,
but
just
that was a component obsolescence issue, and the customer wants to continue building the product for another, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, since we have until, I don't know, the end of next month to place an order. They wanted to make sure that we ordered enough so that they would be able to remain in production until a new product can take its place. That's a little bit different than bringing it into inventory just because it's in short supply. Our inventory increased significantly during the pandemic for two reasons. One is our business increased significantly, so that's going to drive inventory. But there were select parts where, worth, I don't know, many thousands of dollars that we had to go and buy and store extra of that we would not ordinarily have done. Where new customers come in and they're using new and different parts, that usually causes the introduction of a new supplier. So we have brought on a lot of new suppliers recently.
But the other thing to consider too is when you're handling the supply chain, I keep going back to calling it planning, but different parts generally have a different lead time. If you go out, and again, I'm using the typical case, but if you're looking for a commercial off the shelf part, it's available in distributors or with distributors. They have inventory of it. Typically the lead time between when we order it to when it lands on our dock is pretty short, anywhere from literally a day to a couple of weeks. Then you get into custom machines and sheet metal parts, that kind of thing. Now you're looking, again, typically 6, 8 weeks, maybe 9, depending on the complexity of it, somewhere in that range. Circuit boards tend to be a little longer, 10, 12, 14 weeks, whatever it may be. But every part, what I'm trying to get at is every part has a lead time, and you want to be able to plan for that. So again, that all the parts show up when you need them to. A lot of effort goes into knowing what those lead times are and keeping track of it so that if our customer places an order for a product, we give them an initial lead time, and basically it's that initial lead time is as long as the longest lead time item in their product takes to get here, plus a couple of weeks for us to actually build it. Once we've gotten past that, then product can kind of start to roll because we've planned for it. All the materials in, it gets built, it gets shipped, and it kind of goes out. Sometimes those lead times will change. Sometimes there'll be disruptions in the supply chain. Inventory is gone or is lessened or whatever. And we need to be able to manage all that. So there's a lot of logistics involved, a lot of communication with vendors and suppliers on our end to manage when that material is coming in or when we expect it in, or do we push it out so we don't need it when we initially said we did, or do we pull it in, we need it earlier than we said we did. There's a lot of management and logistics going on there to make sure that that material shows up just when we need it to.